In a new interview with CNN, the Georgia prosecutor leading a probe of the former president's efforts to overturn the election there is pushing back on his lawyer's attempts to derail the investigation. She's also offering hints about the next steps she may take in her attempt to uncover whether anything criminal occurred after he narrowly lost the state to President Biden. CNN's Sarah Murray has the interview and the story.
The Atlanta area district attorney investigating Donald Trump says as soon as she has a special grand jury seated in May, she'll start firing off subpoenas.
Most of them will probably start to come in a heavier flow, for lack of a better word, in June and later months. But we will certainly start to do some in May.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis says she isn't worried about Trump working to slow her probe into his efforts to overturn Georgia's election results in 2020.
Are you worried that former President Trump could somehow be able to avoid, delay, what's going on with your investigation?
No.
Why is that? What gives you that confidence?
This is a criminal investigation. We're not here playing a game. I plan to use the power of the law. We are all citizens. Mr. Trump, just as every other American citizen, is entitled to dignity. He's entitled to be treated fairly. He will be treated fairly in this jurisdiction, but I plan to do my job, and my job is to make sure that we get the evidence that gives us the truth. I'm not concerned at all about games to delay this.
And she cast doubt on whether Trump's oft-used argument that he can't be prosecuted for actions while president will protect him in Georgia.
I don't think that protection will prevent a prosecution if that becomes necessary in this state case.
Willis has already met with Trump's attorneys twice about her plans to move the investigation forward.
For instance, last calendar year I met with them and I assured them what I knew. We would not bring forth an indictment in the 2021 year. I met with them at the very end of 2021 to tell them that I would be moving forward, not necessarily with an indictment, but with the next step of an investigation.
Willis launched her investigation nearly a year ago after an hour-long recording went public of Trump pressing Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find the votes for Trump to win Georgia.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Last month, in her request for a special grand jury, she told the court she had reasonable probability of criminal disruptions around the 2020 election.
You and I have listened to that phone call, but also I have the benefit of also having talked to a lot of witnesses and probably having read more on this than most people would like to.
She's digging into Trump's actions as well as those of his allies, including former attorney Rudy Giuliani, former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, witnesses she may subpoena as part of her probe.
I imagine that we're going to be issuing subpoenas to a lot of people and that all of them are not going to welcome our invitation to come speak with us.
She hopes to make a charging decision by the end of 2022. We sat down with Willis in an Atlanta hotel as her office was under lockdown from a possible security threat at the Fulton County Courthouse. Willis was already on high alert after Trump took aim at her and other prosecutors during a rally.
I hope we are going to have in this country the biggest protest we have ever had in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Atlanta.
After those comments, Willis asked the FBI for help assessing potential security deficiencies and sharing intelligence on potential threats.
I don't want to pretend like I didn't hear what I heard. It would be just crazy for me to not pay attention to that. So I wanted to make sure that they were also paying attention.
And Sarah Murray joins us now. Terrific report, Sarah. What did District Attorney Willis tell you about Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and whether he will testify?
Yeah, if there's anyone at the heart of this case other than Donald Trump, it is the Georgia Secretary of State. But Fani Willis made clear she understands what it is like to be in the middle of a campaign, which Secretary Raffensperger, of course, is in for his reelection. She said that she is not going to call him in right before the GOP primary, which is going to be in May. She said his head would not be focused on her case, focused on her investigation, but she does expect to talk to him after that primary, John.
All right, Sarah Murray, thank you very much. Perspective now. In her first appearance as a CNN political commentator, Keisha Lance Bottoms, the former mayor of Atlanta. Mayor, welcome aboard. Great to have you.
Nice to join you. Thank you.
So opening an investigation is one thing. Bringing charges is another thing. Getting a conviction, a third thing entirely. So do you think this investigation has any teeth?
Absolutely. The district attorney would not pursue the special grand jury if it did not have teeth. And just by way of background with Fani Willis, she is a seasoned prosecutor. She's not an administrator. She's not a bureaucrat. She was one of the top prosecutors in the district attorney's office before she sought to become the district attorney. I've worked with Fani in 3 different places, including her first job out of law school, and she walked in the door fearless. So if she is pursuing this, given her experience, given what she knows about what you need to move forward with a criminal case, I assure you there's something there.
You know, we played it in Sarah's piece right there, and in a 2-year period of some of the craziest politics I've ever seen, the piece of sound where Donald Trump says, I need you to find me 11,000 votes. As a piece of evidence, if that isn't incriminating, I'm not sure I understand what is. Can you explain? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the other part to this, you had Rudy Giuliani come and testify before the Senate in Georgia. We don't know if he gave false information. I'm pretty sure that he did during that testimony. At least what I heard, it seemed to be false information. So you have that piece. Also, the call from Lindsey Graham to the Secretary of State. And also the U.S. Attorney at that time, B.J. Pak, who abruptly resigned shortly after the election. And if my recollection is correct, it was based on a call from someone related to this election. So there are still so many things. There are things that we know and there are things that we don't know. And that's what the special grand jury is about. They have up to a year to hear testimony, and they can make recommendations on whether or not criminal charges should proceed. The judge who is presiding over this special grand jury is also a former prosecutor. So you have that piece as well, someone who obviously understands the law. He is a sitting judge, but has also worked as a prosecutor, and I'm sure will be very much in tune with what the district attorney is presenting.
What do you think the implications on other elections would be? Again, if charges were not brought here, what message would it send about something like this being okay?
This is extraordinary in and of itself. The fact that we had a president of the United States interfering with an election, the fact that we are looking at criminal charges against a former president of the United States. So it is also extraordinary. Were it not true, it would be very difficult to believe that this were happening in our country. So I think that it's important that not only that Fani Willis here in Georgia take a serious look and make a determination, but also prosecutors across the country who may also have reason to believe that something was done inappropriately to interfere with the election, because our democracy is about more than one person. It's the reason we call it a democracy. And whether it be the president of the United States or anyone who is seeking to interfere with the sacred right to vote in our democracy, they must be held accountable.
We have just a few seconds left, Mayor. One of the things that we heard DA Willis say was that she wasn't going to bring in the Secretary of State to testify before a primary election, which in a way is saying politics is going to, supersede the criminal investigation, the legal status. Is that normal?
Well, I think that she is being respectful that this is election season. And I would argue that by bringing in the Secretary of State in the midst of a primary, some would argue that she is seeking to tilt the election one way or the other. So I think that it is very smart, very appropriate that she not bring him in during the primary, let the voters have their say, and then proceed accordingly. Again, the special grand jury has up to a year to make a decision, make recommendations. And so there's plenty of time without interfering with the election. And it's also not unusual for charges not to be brought even by the U.S. Attorney during an election.
Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, thank you very much for being with us tonight and welcome to the CNN family.
Thank you.